So if you're wondering how to teach your kids about money, maybe you're wealthy, you have resources, and you're trying to say, I want to prepare my kids to give them a great future, to help them to make good choices. I've seen too many friends and family members where they've just spoiled their kids. It hasn't turned out well. And it is really, really important what you talk to your kids about money, what that looks like, that conversation, how you prepare them. We're going to go over that and talk about several secrets that you can do that can change your life and your kids' life going forward. We're going to go over it in 3 easy steps. I've also got a great quote for you at the end. All right, so this is step number 1. Start when they're young. Don't start when a kid is 18 years old and they're getting ready to leave the house and you're saying, okay, here you go, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about money. You got to start when they're young. And the reason for that is because it takes time. It takes time for kids to learn about what money really is. We start to develop opinions if everything is just a handout, just, hey, I need money. If they know you as dad or mom, that all you do is you hand out cash every time something comes up, that's not really going to prepare them for life. Now, one of the reasons this is really important to me is that I have an 8-year-old daughter, my daughter Ellie, and she's the most important thing in the world to me. Right? So I want to prepare her for being successful in life. I want her to be taken care of, I want her to have enough, but I also want her to be able to make decisions and choices so that she can manage money well. She doesn't squander it, that I give her some money, but I don't give her too much money. She also has some drive to be able to be successful in her own and not just live off of resources that are there from prior generations, which I think is a real tragedy when that happens. So if you know the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, there's actually a kid's version in there. So if you're not familiar with that book, I highly suggest that you read it. I suggest you get the kids version and read it with your kids and you go through it. And basically the idea of teaching kids, right? So we teach people on an informational level. We teach them what we know, but we reproduce who we are. And what that means is I can have all the best ideas about money in the world, but our kids are really watching what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're viewing money. And so if money to you, if you're somebody who handles money a certain way and you look at that and you say, what type of things am I teaching my son and what I'm teaching my daughter? Is money just something that's here, it's always available? Is money some sort of trust or stewardship that I have to kind of be faithful with? And you know, there's even a spiritual component to money, which I think can be healthy. These are all things just to really consider when you look at how you handle money, because kids are always learning. You know, they're always paying attention. They're like little sponges. Even things you don't even think that they're paying attention to, they are paying attention to. So think about the person, the parent, the individual that you're becoming, and that's what you're going to reproduce. So if you're selfish, you're very self-focused, you're very stingy, those are things that your kids are going to see, whether you'd like or not. If you're somebody who's generous, you're somebody who has just a wealth mindset, that you're helping others and you're trying to say, how can I use this to create more? I want to make more impact in the world. I want to have these investments last for a long time, and it's something that's beyond myself. That is something that's going to become very, very apparent to your kids as well. So there's a couple things that people say to their kids that I think it's really important kind of what we say. First of all, it's important that we talk about money. We actually have conversations with our kids about money. We talk about what money is. We talk about how people can squander money. We can share stories of things, how people were unwise with money. We think about struggles that we're going through with money. And one thing, these are really subtle things, but they really send a strong message to your kids. And one of these is this saying that, you know, when you're at a store and your kid wants a toy and you say, we can't buy it, we can't afford that, we can't afford that. Well, wealthy people a lot of times don't say this to their kids because it's not true. If you think about it, I can't afford this $50 toy or this $20 or $100 or $200 toy. It's like, I can afford to buy a lot of those. And I tell my daughter, I said, we can afford to buy that. I said, but we're choosing to do other things with it. We're choosing to invest. We're choosing to pay for our house. We're choosing to pay for our cars. We're choosing to pay for trips. We're choosing to pay for other things instead of buying that. You might think like that's a really small thing, but for a kid, when you say we can't afford that, what do they hear? We can't afford that. We must be poor. We must have no money. And for you, like getting your kids in the mindset that you're poor, I don't think is the best way to have them feel. Now, if you really can't afford it, you can say, I really can't afford that. But I think a better way is to say, no, we can afford that, but what we're choosing is to pay for these other things instead. It's very subtle, but it's a way, again, that shows kids that, especially even from a young age, that we can have restraint and not spend on everything that we just necessarily want to spend on. So it's very important. So that's step number one. All right, so this is step number two, how to prepare your kids for being wealthy. And what's really important as you look at this is to tie money to work. A lot of people that I know basically just give their kids handouts, or they give their kids an allowance and say, hey, here's the money. Here's what I've got. I've got a friend of mine who said this. He said, if you love your kids, you'll give them your time. And if you don't love your kids, you'll give them money. Ouch, doesn't that hurt? And so I think what he's saying is our time is really important to be able to give to our kids, because that's how our kids really see the love from us. And so the messages that we're sending is very, very important. So when you tie money to work, or you tie value to work, what you're doing is you're teaching your kids that money has value. It's not just a handout. It's not something we can blow on whatever we want. There's actually value tied to it. So it's really important to do that. I had this picture with my daughter at the time of this video. She's 8, and we live in California, where they charge you 5 cents per can that you buy when you buy them, because the thought is you go and you put them back into a machine one by one, and it gives you 5 cents per can. So I thought, oh, that's a great way to really teach her about money, right? She gets this manual task of putting them in there and just saying like, oh, after 20 cans, man, this is a lot of work, Dad. And well, how much did you make? I made $1. Well, it takes work to be able to make money. And so there's a way to be able to teach her. Now, side note on that, they actually had a bunch of these in LA or in California up till a few years ago, and they shut them all down because the homeless people were fighting. So it didn't really work out the way that I would hope. So now we take them to recycling centers, but she's still involved in that process, right? So there's a process that goes with that. Another thing you can do with your kids, again, instead of just giving, here's your allowance, you can say, here is the things that you can do to earn money, or here's the things that you can do to get your $5 or $10 a week, or whatever the amount is for you, that your kids can earn. And I would always say less is more. You don't start them out. If you start them out with $100 a week, typically, they're used to inflation as well. Kids don't have to work very hard to understand inflation as well. So if you start smaller, I think especially when they're younger, that's probably a better route to go, because they're definitely going to wear you down as you get older. So have them start early. For me, I started doing chores when I was earlier. My dad had me do dishes. My brother and I would rotate every other day. We basically would do all the dishes, and I remember him waking me up at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. after I went to bed, being 10 years old, and it's, hey, you didn't do the dishes. And I'd be out there, I'd out there tired and frustrated doing the dishes, though, because that was how I got my, at the time, $2 a week of allowance, right? So, and then for me, it really built in me some work ethic. I started working, did a kind of a regular paper route type of job 7 days a week at age 14. And so that really helped with my work ethic. So I'm very grateful to my dad for that. So step number 2 is tie it to work or value as far as how you're paying your kids. Number 3, and this one's really important, is to talk about your investments. Talk about it with your kids. Don't just let your kids think, oh, dad, mom, they just go off to work and they do their thing. We don't really know what they do. No, talk to your kids about this stuff. Talk to them about the money that you're investing. Talk to them about the returns. Talk to them about IRR. I mean, if you teach them when they're young about IRR, people actually understand what IRR is. It'll make my job easier when it comes to educating people. And then also let them invest with you. If it makes sense, they've got money, say, hey, I want to put some money in here for you in this investment, and you're going to see some of the cash flow from this as well, and you're going to see how it works. Now, that takes extra work as a parent, or extra work to kind of figure all that out, but the lesson is really, really valuable. I actually know a guy who has 4 kids. He's pretty well off. He bought a rental house for each of his 4 kids, and as they're young, he's letting them basically manage the entire thing. I think he officially owns it, but he says, no, when you're 18, this is completely yours. But up to that point, he said, you are handling the cash flow, you're handling the repairs, you're working with a property manager, you're doing all this stuff. And so what it does is it gives kids the opportunity to see how passive income actually works, which is absolutely life-changing. Isn't that a great idea? And so I think that's a really cool idea. You can take your kids to conferences. You can take them to meetups. Sometimes bribes are appropriate, right? So if you take them to a meetup for real estate, maybe it's, hey, afterwards we're going to go get ice cream. Maybe that'll be motivating to your kids. Maybe if it's like, hey, we're going to go to this 2-day conference in another area, maybe say, hey, we're going to go to a theme park afterwards. Does that make sense? So anyway, you can get kids around a different type of idea and concept and just get them into things that they're not used to. It's amazing what sort of things will open up when you're able to do that. And then when it comes down to, I know this is really the reason that you are watching this video, is you're saying that I have resources, or you want to have resources, and you want to say with your kids, how do I help my kids so that they can do well with my legacy? And really there's a couple choices when it comes to what you want to do with the financial legacy that you leave, right? You can leave everything to your kids. A lot of people will do. They'll just say, here, your kids get everything. And if that's the case, you better make sure you teach your kids well, right? I think that's probably the harder way to do it, where the kids get everything. The other way is the kids get some, but then some goes to a cause. So to me, I'm going to give a lot away to fight human trafficking. I'm going to give to different causes that I believe in, and obviously my daughter's going to get some. And I think it's important that you have a plan around that, and it's important that you teach your kids, because it's just, this stuff doesn't happen by itself. And it really, typically, you know, wealth does not get passed down from generation to generation to generation without really good structure in place or without really good training. And so this is kind of why you're watching this, and the things that you're doing. I also created this video around a wealth mindset. You may want to watch it, or even watch it with your kids. You can take a look at that video up here. It talks about how to develop a wealth mindset. So I've got an awesome quote here at the end from Robert Kiyosaki that I want to share with you. So he says, the moment you make passive income and portfolio income a part of your life will change. Those words will become flesh. And that's Robert Kiyosaki. The moment that you decide that you're actually going to get passive income, that you're actually going to have money coming in from other places, your life changes. And this is the reason I want to read this for you, is for your kids as well. The moment they see that, something actually really starts to become alive. So I'd love to know from this video, what was the most beneficial thing that you got out of this? And also, what are some things that you are teaching your kids? I'm sure there's some things that I didn't cover that you're teaching your kids. It would be really helpful to the community. Please share that. Put that down in the comments below. If you made it this far, consider subscribing. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next video.